Next up is Collections Manager and Researcher in Invertebrate Zoology, Heidi Gartner.
Good morning. I'm going to talk to you today about a different type of relative invasion than you're probably used to. So my name is Heidi and I'm the Invertebrate Collection Manager here at the Royal BC Museum and study animals without backbones. So the more common things that you guys would probably think of are things like crabs and sea stars and snails. But one of my favorite things to do is impress on people how diverse invertebrates are and frankly how weird they are as well. So just starting basally, we have sponges. Sponges are a group of animals that literally have no organs. They have no tissues. They're filter feeding cells, but they can do things like build their bodies out of glass and build glass sponge reefs, which provide habitat for other animals. There's even species within the sponges that have grown body forms so that they have branching arms and little stabby bits, so they become carnivores. And again, they have no organs or tissues, but they can do this. The cnidarians, so again, you guys probably think of jellyfish. These are all the weird relatives of jellyfish. We've got hydroids, corals, and anemones. They're little weird animals that basically pluck food from the water column. Closely related in sense of body form are bryozoans, but totally different phylum. And these guys are weird. They have all those little polyps for grabbing food, but they're embedded in this hard structure and are basically like little clone armies. There's hundreds of them in like a centimeter disc. So just really strange animals. Crabs, all their relatives include things like krill and shrimp, even barnacles. If you guys didn't know, barnacles are closely related to crabs. The things that you sometimes see coming out of the barnacle plates and feeding, those are essentially equivalent to the crab's legs. And the echinoderms, you guys know sea urchins, sea stars, but there's also sea cucumbers, brittle stars, basket stars, and again, the mollusks. So these are the footed ones. Just to contrast with the sponges, now we've gone up to the super complex body shapes. The octopus actually have essentially 10 brains. Incredible predators. They can do things like change their colors and shapes. They're smart. They can solve tasks. And then don't even get me started on the worms. There's so many different worms. They don't even belong to the same phylum. And then there's these spiky balls. These are tunicates. And believe it or not, out of everything on this page, this is what you're most closely related to. Slide. I'll just go back really quickly and show you. So these animals are growing on like hard substrates. They're benthic animals. So they can grow on things like aquaculture gear and boat hulls. And then their babies can live in the water column for a couple days in things like Ballard. So what they're finding on in other parts of the world, they have similar invasive species to us. Some of these are the exact same invasive species that have been introduced in multiple places, is that they're costing the governments millions of dollars already in increased handling time for aquaculture gear and lost stock. So just down in Washington, this is aquaculture gear completely coated in one species. This is from the east coast of Canada, so millions of dollars estimated lost there. And then these two are from our west coast. So these are oysters and mussels that are just completely covered in invasive tunicates. So we now have 7 known invasive tunicates in BC waters, and we're keeping our eyes out for other ones coming in as well. I'm not going to, based on time and that sort of thing, not going to go into too much detail on most of them. There's 2 reasons for that. 1, we're short on time, and 2, a lot of them, I have to admit, so far don't have super exciting stories. They have limited populations, not much is happening. But I'm going to focus on these top 2, the violet tunicate, Botuloides violaceus, and the star tunicate, Botrytis schlosseri. Just to warn you, they are not always violet and they're not always golden, but these 2 are colonial tunicates that are having more impact along our coast. So these are 2 images of them. One is on the top right here. These are both species in multiple color forms, completely covering structures that I put out in marinas around BC. And then this is an aquaculture. So this is how they culture the oyster babies. There's a flow through in the bottom. But most of what you're seeing in these bright colors here are parts of these colonies. So we found them in BC. They're here. I've been working on this for a while now, so I've previously published this, but we expanded from limited sightings to doing a province-wide survey And we documented for the first time that they were completely all over, the Salish Seas, the Strait of Georgia and Juan de Fuca Strait, the west coast of Vancouver Island, and then the big shocker was how much they were up in Haida Gwaii. They were at multiple sites up there. So I've been working on this for a few years and on and off, and we're hoping to publish an update on this year. So spoil alert, they've spread. More along the west coast, more along here. They're now up in the Broughton Archipelago, and a really surprising find up in Bella Bella, or around the Central Coast. So that's that. But as opposed to just the spreading, the story that I'm starting to find interesting is where we're finding them. So again, I said these are usually introduced by human-mediated methods. So we were finding them usually on aquaculture gear, near aquaculture facilities, or near marinas and boat hulls, that sort of thing. I'm just going to use two examples. One is Langara Island. Langara Island is a very small island at the top of Haida Gwaii. Masset here is invaded, so keep that in mind with these species. But Langara Island itself, more remote. There isn't a community established here year-round. Of course, locals do visit this island as well, but there's no permanent infrastructure there. It's a pretty pristine beach when you're looking at it. It's got gorgeous eelgrass, rocks. When we were coming up, we landed our boat not on any sort of dock, that sort of thing. And what we found, of course, was these two species, and on rocks as well. So my question now is, how did it get from Masset to Langara Island? It most likely is something like boat hulls, so recreational boats are now finding these animals on them. But it could also be things like this I found on the beach. It was washed up and in the dry zone. It didn't have anything on it, but it could. And then a little bit closer to home, here's Ladysmith Harbor, as you're seeing down here, completely coating rocks. But what hit me stronger is that it was growing on eelgrass, and this is actually an image of an eelgrass blade completely covered by this animal. For people who don't know very much, eelgrass beds are really important biological habitats along our coast. They're often really important focuses for biological protection, that sort of thing. They do things like they're nursery grounds for rockfish, they do carbon sequestration, all sorts of great things. So it's really scary to me that these invaders could coat and kill. So you guys have heard the economic impacts, the potential ecological impacts. There's interest in this from a national standpoint and actual international collaborators along the coast. So I've been building information on this over the past couple of years. And then why is this information important for the Royal BC Museum? Why is this research potentially important? We do contribute to our online outreach like we were discussing in our outputs, but the heart of everything is the collections. So this was a relatively underrepresented group in the museum, so I've been building this collection. I've also been going through things that previously weren't ID'd and making sure we can ID them. And so the collections are improving from all this research. And then also just being active in the scientific community. We've published on this. We are invited out on boats with our colleagues at Fisheries and Oceans. We have investments from the Smithsonian Institute. So just being active, we are seen as a scientific research hub, and that the Royal BC Museum holds expertise. Thank you very much.